There is a moment that happens so quickly most people never notice it. Someone says a sentence, and something inside you moves. Not your eyes, not your hands. Something deeper. You remember. You remember where you were, what the room looked like, the way the light entered through a window. You remember exactly what they said. You remember your own reaction. You remember, or at least, that is what it feels like. Years later, someone else who is standing beside you remembers the same moment differently. Different words, different expressions, different emotions. One of you must be wrong, and yet both of you feel equally certain. That certainty is where this story begins, because most people imagine memory as storage, a room somewhere inside the skull. Events enter, they remain, and later, they are retrieved, like opening a drawer, like replaying a recording. That is not what happens. Your brain does not store your life. It rebuilds it, every single time. Imagine walking through snow. You leave footprints behind. Hours later you return, but instead of following the same path, you step again, and again. Eventually the original trail disappears. Only the newest version remains. Memory appears permanent because reconstruction happens invisibly. But researchers began noticing something strange. When people remembered important moments, they often became less accurate, not more. That sounds impossible. Emotion should make memories stronger. Significant moments should become clearer. Instead, under certain conditions, significance appears to make memories easier to rewrite. The more a memory matters, the more often it is revisited. And every revisit becomes another opportunity to alter it. Not intentionally, not maliciously, quietly, almost compassionately, as if the brain values usefulness over truth. In one experiment that became quietly famous in psychology, participants were shown photographs and told stories from childhood. Most stories were real. One was invented. A simple event. Being lost, nothing dramatic, no trauma, no elaborate deception, just enough detail. A location, a feeling, a suggestion. Days passed. Then something unusual happened. People began remembering, not pretending. Remembering, they added details. Clothing, weather, conversations. One participant described being comforted afterward. Except none of it had happened. Not 1 second. The event had been built from fragments already inside them, and once assembled, it felt indistinguishable from reality. Researchers noticed something uncomfortable. People do not need evidence to create memories. They need narrative. This creates a difficult question. If memory is reconstruction, then what exactly are you remembering? The answer appears stranger than forgetting. You may not remember events. You may remember previous versions of remembering events. Copies of copies. Like rewriting a sentence until the original disappears. This would explain something almost everyone has experienced. A family argument. A breakup. An old friendship. Years later, everyone involved tells different stories. Nobody thinks they are lying, because they usually are not. Each person has become loyal to their edited version. Not because people protect truth, but because identity protects coherence. Your brain has a problem. Reality arrives unfinished. Too much information. Too many details. Too much uncertainty. So the brain compresses. It extracts patterns, meaning, predictions, stories. This process is extraordinarily efficient. Without it, life would become impossible. You would drown inside sensory detail, but compression creates distortion, and distortion creates memory. Scientists studying perception discovered something unsettling. Your brain already predicts the present before fully receiving it. By the time you become aware of seeing, parts of what you experience have already been constructed. Memory may not be a separate system. It may simply be perception continued across time, meaning your experience of the past and your experience of now are less different than they appear. That realization changes something. Because if memory is partly construction, what else is? There is another strange phenomenon. People often remember emotional truth while forgetting factual truth. Someone forgets the exact words their parents said, but remembers feeling small. Someone forgets details of a relationship, but remembers loneliness. Emotion survives. Structure changes. The brain appears less interested in preserving events than preserving lessons, which means fake memories are not always failures. Sometimes they are adaptations. Sometimes they are attempts to create continuity, to preserve identity, to protect movement through time. This sounds comforting until you realize what else it means. Some of the stories that define you may never have happened the way you think. The moment you decided nobody could be trusted. The day you believed you became confident. The memory that explains who you are. Maybe real, maybe reconstructed, maybe both. History scales this problem upward. Entire cultures remember selectively. Entire nations tell themselves stories. Victories become cleaner. Failures become smaller. Complex events become myths. Memory does not stop at individuals. Groups reconstruct too. Civilizations create identities exactly the way brains do. By compressing, by editing, by repeating. Human history may be partially collective memory, and collective memory appears vulnerable to the same distortions, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. Perhaps truth has never competed against forgetting. Perhaps it has always competed against storytelling. But then, if memory cannot be trusted, how do people live? Oddly, by not needing perfect truth. Research suggests healthy minds are not necessarily the most accurate ones. Sometimes they are simply the most adaptive. People who imagine better futures often distort past suffering. People recovering from hardships sometimes remember themselves as stronger than they were. People in love rewrite beginnings. People grieving rewrite endings. The brain appears willing to sacrifice precision for survival. Not always, but often. And maybe that is less a flaw than a design choice. Because a species obsessed with exact memory might never move forward. Tonight, somewhere, someone is telling a story. About childhood. About loss. About the day everything changed. Their voice is calm. Their certainty absolute. The room listens. Nobody questions it. Not because the story is necessarily true, but because it feels true. And perhaps that distinction has always mattered more to human beings than we admit. Your memories feel permanent because they arrive carrying emotion. But somewhere beneath the scenes and dialogue and certainty, your brain is still writing, still adjusting, still rebuilding, not preserving who you were, constructing who you need to become. And somewhere inside that process, the person remembering and the person being remembered quietly become different people without ever noticing.